This is how to survive a terrible electronic drum set. That's coming up. What's up? Justin here. Welcome to 65 Drums, the place to keep on top of all things electronic drum related. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. We've all had this happen. Either we were on a really tight budget and we had to buy a terrible drum set for like 150 bucks off of a friend who bought it from another friend and it's really old and everything. Or maybe you have to play at a really small club where they force you to play a crappy old electronic drum set that's there as like the house set. Or maybe a church that doesn't have a big budget. They have a really old electronic drum set from the 90s. Everyone has a different definition of old, so don't get caught up on that in the comments. But anyway, a lot of us have come into the situation where we're playing this awful electronic drum set. We feel like we want to gouge our eyes out. Here's a couple things you can do to survive this ordeal. Starting off with number one. Program the sounds inside of your drum module. Believe it or not, there are a lot of drummers out there that never actually try to assemble their own kit via different sounds inside of the drum module. Almost every electronic drum module out there lets you take a snare from one kit and a cymbal from another kit and sort of cobble together your favorite pieces from all the 50 drum sets inside of the drum module. A lot of drummers out there, believe it or not, they just cycle through all the kits, decide they hate all of them, and they give up on the drum set entirely. So spend the time to really program those sounds. Also, make sure that you spend the time, if there's an EQ section, if there's a compression section, really dial those in. A lot of times you'd think a drum set sounds really crappy until you just boost certain like frequencies. So maybe the lows are just killing the vibe. You need to boost those to make the kick drum more punchy. Even in my Roland TD30, there are certain sets that I almost gave up on. I thought they were kind of worthless. They didn't sound that great. But after you boost the lows and cut out some of the mids or whatever it is you need to do, whatever frequencies are the issue, just try to EQ it a little bit and you can really improve the sound. Also, using compression in a smart way can really help improve your overall sound as well. Just use whatever tools your drum module gives you and you can actually sculpt a better sound. If you just put in a half an hour, I think it's worth putting in a little extra time to improve your sound. So that's the first step to surviving a terrible electronic drum set. Number two, reposition the pads. This is one of those things that you don't really think about, but if you're playing a really crappy drum set, all the pads are probably like, what, 6 or 8 inches across. They're really, really tiny. And if some midget was playing this drum set and sort of squashed all the pads together, you sit down. A big part of the problem with this electronic drum set that really throws off the feel of the full kit is that it's just not positioned properly. So take the time and reposition all the pads, however it is you like to play a drum set. Some people like to have the 2 high toms and 1 floor tom. Some people want to take away that second high tom and use it as a second floor tom, you know, the 1 up, 2 down setup. Some people like their cymbals up really high, some people like their cymbals really low. Just position it according to your favorite drum setup that you have in your mind. We've all sat down to someone else's drum set and we've just felt a little bit lost, you know, because the setup is so weird. When you position everything to the style you're used to, it instantly makes you a better drummer because you're used to it and you have more fun doing it. So make sure that you reposition all the pads. That will make you at least be able to survive the time you have with this terrible electronic drum set. The next tip costs money. This is for people that have bought the drum set. They're not just playing it for one night. They bought this electronic drum set, money was tight, so they were forced to buy this crappy drum set for practice reasons. Here's one thing you can do that will instantly make you like this drum set a lot more. Buy drum software. You know, I've talked about this quite a bit, but if you're willing to spend $100 to buy some drum software, you can greatly improve the feel of your electronic drum set. Not the feel physically when you're playing it, but inside your head, because half the battle is how terrible these electronic drum sets sound. I hate to say this, but you have to spend thousands of dollars to get an electronic drum set that sounds halfway decent. It hurts to say that, but most electronic drum sets sound like trash. So if you really want to go all in on getting a great sound, even with a terrible, cheap electronic drum set, throw some drum software on your laptop. Easy Drummer is a great piece of drum software. Addictive Drums, those are like the 2 I would look into. There's even free drum software. I made an entire video on that. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. But use drum software. You'll have a lot more fun with this kit if you're doing that. You might have some issues where like the hi-hat doesn't work 100%. Of course, you'll get that open and half open sound, but the open and close variation might be cut down some if you're using certain pieces of drum software like Easy Drummer that doesn't give you like full control over that. Newer drum software, more high-end drum software like Superior Drummer 3 gives you a lot more control over that. I know people get great results with Steven Slate drums, stuff like that. But still, the overall sound quality, you will thank me if you start using drum software with a bad drum set. I can get away with using the sounds of my Roland TD30 because they genuinely sound good for practice and even in live applications. Not good enough for recording, but it's good enough for playing live and for practicing. But if you've got a bad drum module and the sounds are really, really bad, if they're terrible, you might have to go buy some drum software. And it's great for recording purposes because drum software is recordings of professionals hitting the highest end, most expensive drum sets out there on the planet. So it sounds amazing. You'll thank me later. Go check it out. The next tip is consider upgrading your amp or your headphones. If you're using slightly better headphones, that means you're gonna have slightly more fun playing that drum set. If you use a TD50, but you're playing it out of a guitar amp or a crappy pair of headphones, it's gonna sound like crap because the headphones, the amp, it's the emissary between the drum set and your ears because electronic drums don't make any sound. Believe it or not, I get comments, I get questions. People want to know, do the drum pads themselves have little speakers built into them? The answer is no. Obviously, you need headphones, you need a drum amp, but consider what, headphones, what amp you're using. If you want to upgrade your drum amp, Simmons makes a nice range of drum amps you can go check out. A PA system works even better. My favorite pair of headphones are the Sennheiser line. I'll link some down in the description below if you want to go check those out. But consider what kind of audio source you're listening out of. Even a bad electronic drum set can sound better if you upgrade what you're listening to it through. Here's another tip to surviving a terrible electronic drum set. If you want to survive a terrible electronic drum set that you got to play for, long term, you got to play it for at least 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, depending on how bad the situation is, consider upgrading the most annoying pad on that drum set. For me, I would definitely consider looking at upgrading your snare or your kick drum pad because it's the pad that you're gonna hit the most. It's like the most important pad on the drum set. So if you can buy a small mesh snare just to replace that stupid rubber pad that you're using for your snare right now, that would be great. If you've got a kick drum tower that moves all over the place and it's driving you nuts, either put a brick behind it or buy a better kick drum tower that doesn't move. If there's that one pad that's absolutely driving you insane, consider upgrading it. It'll greatly increase how much fun you're having with that drum set. By the way, if you're wondering what pads work with what drum modules, just to make sure you don't accidentally buy a pad that won't work with your drum set, I made an entire video about compatibility. It answers the question, do Yamaha pads work with Roland modules and vice versa, Two-Box and Alesis, all that good stuff. I'll link that down in the description below if you want to go check that out to make sure you don't accidentally buy something that doesn't work with your drum set. Here's another idea to survive this terrible electronic drum set. If you're playing a set that sounds absolutely terrible, there's a high chance that there's a couple of repeat offenders in the sound bank. So a lot of times electronic drum modules that are really, really cheap, the cymbals sound like trash. I don't know what it is about electronic drum sets, but the cheap ones never handle the cymbal sounds. They always sound super fake, super cheesy. Only like the really high-end electronic drum modules do slight justice to how an actual acoustic cymbal sounds. So if you got a really terrible electronic drum set and the hi-hat or maybe one of the crash cymbals is driving you nuts, just try to utilize them a little bit less. So focus more on your kick snare work, focus more on drum fills, just avoid the terrible crappy sounds. Again, this goes back to tip number 1. You need to program the set so all the best sounds from all the different kits are all cobbled together in your one custom kit that sounds sort of decent. So yeah, just avoid the terrible sounds. They're in there, they're annoying. Just focus on the sounds that are really, really good. Believe it or not, even crappy old drum modules, the kick and snare and toms usually sound semi-decent when you're playing them through a PA system. I remember someone playing a drum set I will not name because a bunch of people own it and they don't think it's terrible, but it actually is. But I was listening to it through a PA and the kick and snare actually sounded sick. They actually sounded great. The cymbals sounded like trash, but at least the kick and snare sound pretty good. So, focus on the sounds that actually sound good. Do more kick and snare work, do the tom fills, all that good stuff. And the last tip is actually something I've been thinking about recently. It's not really that we're angry at the electronic drum set itself, it's our mentality of what the drum set should be. We have this vision in our mind of what an acoustic drum set should sound like. And we project that onto the electronic drums, obviously because the drums are trying to mimic an acoustic drum set. And it sort of makes it a lot less fun to play because we have this standard and then the drum set that we're playing is like way down here. Throw away all those preconceived ideas on how good this electronic drum set should be. It is what it is. You got a crappy drum set, you know it, you're playing it for practice reasons, you're just trying to have fun, and focus on that. Focus on having fun. We've all been stuck in traffic, listening to a song on the radio, and we've drummed on the steering wheel, or we've drummed on a table. Did the table sound good? Did the steering wheel sound good? No. Did we have fun playing it? Of course. And it was all a mentality thing. Stop taking the electronic drum set so seriously. Some people get legit mad. They're like insanely mad at their electronic drum set because they know it's not very good. But that's not the idea that you should have when you're playing this drum set. Just look at it as something to practice, get better with, and just have fun. That's all you should be looking at it with. And eventually, you'll come into more money, you can upgrade, you can play acoustic drums if you want to go to the acoustic route, or you can just buy a better electronic drum set that actually does your playing justice. So, just a couple of thoughts I've been thinking about recently on how to survive a really bad electronic drum set. I want to hear your horror stories. What was the worst electronic drum set you had to play for some reason? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm really interested to find out, what did you do to overcome that terrible situation? Hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a few.